Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Sociology with Mahima. In this video, we will cover the topic inductive and deductive logic in social research along with the differences between them, which is a part of Unit 3 of IGNOU MSO 2. So let's get started. Let's first talk about inductive logic in social research. Inductive logic in social research refers to a reasoning process that moves from specific observations to general conclusions or theories. Unlike deduction, which begins with a pre-existing theory and test, induction starts with raw data collected from the real world and gradually builds up concepts or theory from it. This makes inductive reasoning a bottom-up approach, where the researcher begins by observing patterns and regularities before formulating general statements or hypotheses. The process begins with a collection of detailed, often qualitative data, such as interviews, field notes, and case studies. The researcher carefully observes and records behaviors, events, and social interactions in their natural settings. Once sufficient data is gathered, the next step is to look for recurring patterns or themes within the information. These regularities are then used to form generalizations or tentative hypotheses, which later evolve into broader theoretical insights. Inductive logic is particularly useful in exploratory research, where little or no existing theory is available to explain a social phenomena. It is commonly used in qualitative research methods like ethnography, grounded theory, and case study analysis, especially when the goal is to understand new or complex social realities. One of the key strengths of inductive reasoning is that it produces theory that are deeply grounded in real-world data. This makes the findings rich, meaningful, and directly connected to people's life experiences. It also allows researchers to discover unexpected patterns or insights, because the approach is flexible and open-ended, not restricted by rigid theoretical assumptions. However, inductive logic also has its limitations. Since it relies on specific cases or small samples, there is always a risk of overgeneralization, assuming that what is true for one group applies to all. Findings may also be context-specific, making them difficult to generalize to other settings. Additionally, the process is time-consuming, as it involves in-depth observation and continuous data comparison. A classic example of inductive reasoning is when an ethnographer studies several migrant worker communities and notices similar strategies they use to survive. Based on repeated observations, the researcher develops a theory that informal social networks help migrants sustain themselves. This movement from many specific observations to a general theory is the essence of induction. Now let's look at deductive logic in social research. Deductive logic is a top-down approach in research that begins with a general theory and move towards specific testable hypotheses. In this approach, researchers start with an established theoretical framework or existing literature, from which they derive predictions that can be empirically tested. The data collected is then analyzed to confirm, refine, or reject the original theory. This method is particularly useful when strong theories already exist, and the goal is to test these theories through structured research designs, often quantitative in nature, such as surveys or experiments. The main advantage of deductive logic is that it provides clear direction and structure to research. It makes it easier to develop measurable hypotheses, apply statistical tests, and draw conclusions that either support or challenge a theory. However, deductive research can also be rigid and may not capture new or unexpected insights, since it primarily focuses on confirming what is already theorized. This limitation can sometimes lead to data being forced to fit predefined ideas rather than allowing new patterns to emerge. For example, if a theory states that social capital increases political participation, a researcher may deduce that people with higher trust in their neighbors will be more likely to vote. They would then collect and analyze survey data to test whether this specific hypothesis holds true. Inductive and deductive logic represents two fundamental but opposite approaches to reasoning and research in social science. Inductive logic begins with specific observations or data and moves toward forming general theories or concepts. Researchers using this approach start with a preconceived theory. Instead, they collect detailed data, often qualitative in nature, look for patterns, categories, or relationships that help build a new theory. Induction is therefore data driven and ideal for exploring new or less studied phenomena. It is flexible and open ended, allowing unexpected findings to emerge. However, because inductive reasoning relies on limited observations, its conclusion may not always be generalizable and may reflect the researcher's subjective interpretations. On the other hand, deductive logic follows a theory driven approach, starting from a general theory or established knowledge and moving towards specific hypotheses that are then tested empirically. This method seeks to confirm or refute theoretical predictions using structured data collection and statistical analysis, commonly in quantitative research. Deduction offers precision and clarity in testing hypotheses, but may be rigid and overlook novel or unanticipated insights since it is bound by existing theories. In summary, inductive logic focuses on building new theory, while deductive logic aims to test existing theory. The two approaches are complementary. Induction helps generate new ideas and deduction helps verify and refine them. That's all for today's video. Thank you for joining the class. See you in the next video.